What is this stuff? In this episode of Aston1936.com, I'm going to talk about how to upgrade the sound insulation on the back of the plastic front inner wheel well arch liners. That's a mouthful. But basically in the front, each of the wheel wells, there's a plastic arch liner that's there to stop all the road debris and things like that from flicking up into the fenders and getting into the engine compartment. So these things are kind of like a shield around the tire. And my car is a 2005 and it's 2021, so my car is 16 years old. I'm doing my 2-year annual service right now, so I have my wheel well arch liners out because you have to do that to get to your air boxes. And what I discovered was, so just a quick look at the deteriorating condition of the sound insulation on the driver's side. None of the adhesive is holding it all, and you can see underneath the plastic is disintegrating. And these little patches of tape are actually the ones I did from probably 6 or so years ago where I was trying to keep it intact. But basically it's just flopping there. On the passenger side, substantially more deterioration. Some of the tape is holding still that I put on, but it's getting ready just to fall off. So there's a better way to put on sound insulation if you've got the time and patience. So it got me thinking, well, what's the purpose of this thing? Well, this is soundproofing. There's no heat in this area of the car. So this is strictly here to deaden the sound of when a little rock flicks off the tire and then it, rattles up and, flings into the plastic. So it wants to deaden the sound that you would hear in the car. So it's soundproofing. Well, 16 years later, there's a lot better solutions. And so I wanted to basically, instead of getting a replacement piece of insulation from Aston Martin, I wanted to find a better way to do it. So those of you that are automotive enthusiasts have probably already heard about a product called Dynamat. So Dynamat's used in a lot of aftermarket performance cars. It's a heat insulation, it's a sound deadener. It's really a really heavy, dense material that you stick all over the surface. It's just a big sheet of adhesive material, and it deadens the sound. But Dynamat is very expensive and it's very heavy. So I wanted to find something in between, and I'd seen in another television show where they used essentially the same idea. So this is foil-backed insulating material for HVAC systems. It has an R value of 3. It's completely adhesive once you start to unroll it, just like Dynamat. And I've already done one here so that I'd know how to actually show you how to do this yourself, where essentially you wrap the whole surface that'll be hidden on the inside of the car with this stuff, and it adds a dampener to the resonance of the material. So I've actually gone and fitted this, and this is what I'm going to show you how to do today. We're going to need a few tools and supplies. Obviously, the star of the show is the special duct installation that I'm going to recommend you use. So this is made by Frost King. It's called Duct Insulation Self-Adhesive Foil and Foam. It's 12 inches wide by an 1/8 inch thick. It's 15 feet long. My experience has been that one roll will get you easily through a fender liner. I don't know if 2 rolls will do it. This is all that's left after the first one. So I would suggest getting 2 of these rolls, and I'll try to put a link to where you might get this on Amazon or something like that in the comments, and also in my companion blog article. So these were only about $25. I picked it up at the local home center. And so 2 rolls of that would give me about 30 feet of 1 foot wide material. Supplies wise, I'm going to use some 409. We're going to want to clean the plastic liner really well before we attach it. So I've got some 409 in a spray bottle. You can pick that up or an equivalent at your local home center. And then another thing I have is, after I clean it with 409, is I sprayed it down with an alcohol solution. So this was 4 ounces of 70% isopropyl alcohol. You can pick this up at your local pharmacy or online. I'll have a link for that. And then 4 ounces of the 70% alcohol, 24 ounces of water. And we're just basically going to use that as a diluted alcohol solution to make sure there's no residues that are to interfere with the adhesive. Tools, I found a putty knife was kind of handy to help me peel off the old bits of tape for the old insulation. I used a pair of scissors to trim the insulation material, and I used a blade, a utility blade, and I went through at least 3 or 4 of the blades. They dull pretty quickly cutting through this foil, so you want to have some replacement blades handy. So then I have this tool. So this actually is an official Dynamat roller. This just helps, when you're applying it to the fender, you need it to get stick down really, really well. So I'll have a link to where you could get one of these. If you didn't have one of these, you could probably be methodical and just use the butt of a big screwdriver and work your way around the whole surface, but that's a lot of work. So you might want to invest in one of these Dynamat rollers. I used a Sharpie marker to mark a few things out as I was working on them. A tape measure was handy to do some to do some rough measuring of the size of pieces I needed to cut. And then I had some scrap paper around because I made a template on one of the openings, and I'll show you how to use that. So once you've gathered all your tools together, let's go talk about the prerequisites before we can get started. So there's a couple of obvious prerequisites. We need to get the car up off the ground so that we could remove the road wheel, and then we can get the fender liner out so we can work on it on the bench. I'll have videos linking to those steps up here. So the process is likely to take you about an hour per fender liner to do. At least that's what it's taking me. I'd also suggest that you start by washing it. I took mine and I laid it down and I pressure washed out the inner side towards the wheel, just because we need to get the thing clean, and I knew if the inside was all grubby, my hands would be tracking it out to the outside. So I had the unit laid down and I used my pressure washer, or you could use a hose and just a scrubby and clean out the inside of the fender liner so you can handle it without getting really trashed. So the first step is I want to get the old sound insulation off, and so you're just going to have to find a way that works for you. But basically it's held on by double-sided tape, and if you get in here, you should be able to peel those back. Obviously, what might also help is to have a nice big work surface, so you might be working on the garage floor or your dining room table if your sweetie's not home. So more or less, I'm just going to work my way around the unit, and if I need to, I might use my putty knife to pry off a little of the adhesive. So let's make the move to time lapse. So it took just a couple of minutes to get the old manky part off. It sort of just kept disintegrating as I did it. But we can set that aside now. And so what we have is a dusty, because essentially this has never really been exposed to the road. This has been on the hidden side inside the wheel well. So this is just going to be full of dust after 15 years. So now I'm going to hit it. I need to get this clean because we're going to try to stick down the new sound insulation to it. So I'm just going to use the 409 solution to start with. Saturate it, use one of my shop rags, and go to town wiping it down. Not a lot of science to this, but basically take your time, get all the way through it, do all the nooks and crannies, and work your way around the whole exterior. Let's cut to the time lapse. So we're done with the 409 first pass, and you can have a look here. It cleans up really pretty well just on the very first attempt. So there's no dust on here anymore. So what I want to do though is now I'm going to take the alcohol solution, and this is going to get rid of any last bits of greases or any residue of the 409. And again, the process is just going to be liberally apply it. And I'm going to use a microfiber towel, and then I'm just going to wipe it all down again with the alcohol solution. Let's cut to the time lapse. All right, so the alcohol's wipes finished up. It's had time to dry off. You can come over and have a look at it here in close, and you can see it's basically looking like, you know, raw, sort of a semi-gloss ABS plastic, which is perfect. Now it's time to get started on laying down the new insulation, and I wanted to show you the old one. This is not a precision deal. It's a little bit of arts and craftsy. So we're going to start with this piece down here because it's a good one for you to learn how to handle the material. At least that was my experience. And I wanted to tell you, you are not trying to do a perfect one-piece seamless process. It's okay to have gaps and cracks and things like that as you piece it together, because you're going to need to do that to piece in some of the stuff. Also, remember, the whole purpose behind this is to stop sound transfer. So where there's a really complicated embutment, kind of like this thing, we don't need to put sound insulation on that. That thing itself is rigid, so it's not worth the effort to try and wrap that. So we just want to get the big smooth areas as reasonably as possible. We also need to leave cutouts for where things go through, where the bolt holes are. You might be wondering what this panel is and why it's missing here. So this is the headlight bulb changing access panel if you were to take the wheel off to change your headlights. So I'm just going to leave that in place. I'm going to show you how to cut a template and fill that one in. So you can put this one aside. I guess, so you can see here too, we want it to still be able to bend and flex. So I'm not being fussy about getting them absolutely butted together because I want it to still have some flexibility to it. And so those little joins let it do that. So let's go ahead and get started on the new one. All right, the first piece we're going to set in here is this nice, essentially flat part. And this just unrolls as a sheet. And the whole thing is adhesive, and it's pretty sticky. So I usually look to unroll it and kind of just get a piece of about the right size at least. And then I'm going to trim it from the roll. To start with. So now it's easier for me to handle. And then I'm just going to look for whatever, maybe a straight line that I want to line up. And so I'm going to go along this crease mark in the actual plastic. And then I'm going to try to also do it in a way that it maximizes the cutoff, the areas of the cutoff. Like I could put it like this, and then I'm going to get a little triangle there and a little triangle here. But if I do it like this, where I get this corner lined up, and then I'm just going to press back. So I'm going to have a very small bit of waste here, and I'm going to get a nice big piece of leftover here that I might be able to use for someplace else on the project. So I'm just going to run this down with my finger first. But we have to do a couple trims here, right? So I found if I come and I fold it up, I can see this little groove I'm going to try to line up to, and I'm using my fingernails to sort of leave myself a guideline on where I might want to cut it with a pair of scissors. So then I'm going to pull it back up a little bit, but I can still see the guideline. There's the leftover, and then you stick it down. And if there's a little bit that you want to adjust. So before I go at it with the roller to really make it more permanent, I can make sort of any fine adjustment that I wanted to. That's not very difficult, even for an engineer like me. So next I'm going to also mark the other side. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect. All it's doing is dampening the sound. So yeah, you know, I'm not exactly to the mold line there, but I don't really care. And then I'm got a little bit sticking up there. I might just trim off. All right, so now that I have it fairly well fit to the shape, this is where I'm going to take my roller. And this is the important part. You really need to make sure every last bit of the foam is squashed down, making contact with the plastic underneath. That's the magic. It's not just sitting above it, it's attached to it. So just be methodical. You can roll it out. And there you go. This is a good learner piece because if you screw it up, just peel it off and, you know, start again. So now I wouldn't bother coming back and try to fill that in. Again, that's not the point. We're just trying to get the big bulk areas covered up. So then it's going to get a little bit more complicated now because this was a nice flat triangle shape. The rest of it is primarily curved surfaces, but this stuff is pretty moldable. You know, we'll be able to come in here and mold it around. So the process I'm going to follow is I'm going to put in a 1 foot wide sheet to begin with here. And this is where the tape comes in handy because we're going to want to pre-measure this just to get a rough length of how long a piece we want to wrap around. And that's about 18 inches. So now I'm just going to take this, stretch it out, and trim myself off a roughly 18-inch piece. I want to basically make my life as easy as possible, so I'm just going to try to lay it on here and follow down sort of an even strip here. And I have it just up where I'm overlapping the farthest back piece at the top. And I'm just going to lightly start pressing it down, following the mold. You know, there's a little crease line in here. It's malleable, so it'll fold around. Now I've got these two big, you know, abutments coming up here, so I'm going to sneak on down to those. So there they are. I can feel them. So this is where I'm just going to freehand use my knife. Now, tip. You can cut through this. It's pretty hard, but you don't want to get in there and hone on it. You just want to come in here, feel out where you're going to trim, and do a gentle, you just want to break the surface of the foil. You can always come back and cut out more. You might have to gently go through a second time to cut the foam. And then you can come in here and lay that down. Again, we're going to do this. And there you go. So, you know, if you had to come back, you know, if there was a stretch, it can, once you cut out most of it, you can probably get the rest of it to bend around the remaining area. If you had to, you could always come back in here, do a little, you know, a little trim just to make it as sweet as you wanted to make it. But that's plenty good enough. And then you get in here and you start your rolling. You might want to go back and forth one way and then back and forth the other way. You know, there's a little bit of a molding here, so you take your time and work your way around it. All right, so now if we flip it over, we can see I've gone past the edge a little bit. deliberately, and I have a hole to cut out here. So I'm just going to gently run my blade along. And also I want to do a little poke through. Be careful, don't cut yourself. So I'm going to poke a pencil through the hole just so we can see it. So again, you don't have to be too fussy here. I'm just going to use it and cut out a square. And that is how you can deal with a bolt hole. Now, the preference might be yours whether you want to try to run right up to the edge. I've actually decided I'm going to leave about a 1/4 inch reveal now that I know where the edge is. I'm just going to come back along and without cutting through the arch liner itself. Basically, I'm going to finish the edge like that because I don't want to have it showing past. So this will be my finished edge. Will be back about a 1/4 inch from the actual edge. And then the last step is just to give that a roll. Make sure it's well seated. Okay, so I'm not going to torch you with a play-by-play about every little thing. We're going to cut to the fast forward, but basically you're just going to work your way methodically all the way. You know, we're going to maybe cut in a piece that's triangular here, going to cut a square and fit it over there, going to cut another piece here, and I'm going to keep working my way one area at a time until I get to the other end. So it's an art project. It's not a science project. So do your best, and let's cut to the fast forward. Well, after about an hour's worth of meticulous time, and it's kind of therapeutic, it's not really challenging. I've got basically all of it covered back up again. As you saw in the time lapse, I've cut out the openings for all the different holes, and basically it's ready to go back in the car. So that cost a little less than $25 to do that. Not only have we gotten rid of the manky old kind of broken down insulation, we've actually improved the quality of the soundproofing while we were at it. So that's kind of a win-win. Kind of fitting under the hat of while you're at it syndrome. Since you've got your wheel arch liners out and you've got the side that faces the wheel also super cleaned, if you want it to look brand new and black again, so here's what it looks like after 15 years. Come in for a look. Kind of looks, you know, you can see where all the dirt flicks up against it normally. It looks kind of gray, a little faded out, but you can bring it right back to looking like new again. So if you care, I used Meguiar's Ultimate Black Plastic Restorer. You just more or less get an applicator pad and you sponge this on, and it just absorbs in a matter of 30 minutes. And that's what transformed this back to looking like brand new. Do not do this step beforehand because it's kind of greasy and you could get it transferred onto the backside where you're going to have to try and clean it off. So after you've put this on and you got your sound insulation on, if you felt like it, you could go ahead and treat the inside of the fender well as well. So that's it for this one. If you like videos like this, please go ahead and subscribe and you'll get automatically notified. Up here, you'll certainly probably find one of my videos on how to either remove or reinstall the fender liner. Down here, you're going to find my companion blog article where I'll have links to the foam insulation, tools, and anything else, maybe the McGuire stuff. And as always, I love to hear your comments. So if you could please leave those down below, I'd appreciate hearing from you. Thanks for watching.